Hi, welcome back. Today I wanted to discuss the toxicity or the negative elements to be wary of and to try your best to eliminate from your concept or understanding of a religion. And this is such a dangerous subject that in the name of religion, there's been so many wars, people were killed, people were ostracized, cultures were desecrated, and a lot of aggression went into it. And also it was used as a tool for control and political power, and adversely so, because if one sees the history of most of the major religions and look at some of the situations where they used certain interpretations and technicalities to bring about the death and destruction of other people. So, fortunately, I had an open mind from my childhood, and the influence of the person who has the greatest influence on your learning and your molding of character, as well as your morals and ethics, is the most important in creating the foundational belief structures in you. And me, I was fortunate that I did not use my parents as a foundational structure, and I used my spiritual teachers that I used as a core guideline, and fortunately I wasn't exposed to too many literatures and cultures, because the world was still very unexpanded from a technological perspective. So we could only get what we got in books, and there was one set of knowledge and books which I used. The Divine Life Society, for example, that had the most expansive influence and knowledge in my upbringing, early phase. And so obviously it means that Swami Sivananda's opinions and ideas were influential, and his writings and the books that were available, this is long after his death, that I was born. So mainly through his writings that were collected together. And he had an open-minded opinion about all religions, right? About Christianity, Islam, and he wanted to dedicate something that is universal. And even his main prayer was an English prayer, which was called, "O adorable Lord of mercy and love, prostrations and salutations unto thee," and so on, right? I did not memorize it, but I used to hear it being recited often in the yoga classes that I attended. And after that, they didn't discuss much about any, it was your choice, So it was open to people who were Christians and who were Muslims, and anyone could come. And even in the prayer, they mentioned all the major religions as being respectful and worshipped, right? So this topic, that I chose is not something that I go and scratch my head and think about and what shall I talk about today and so forth. I just come in front of the camera and then I decide to talk on something that's weighing very heavily in my heart for that day, and a lot of experience that I incurred and certain important points there that I found is unnecessary and very sad and a waste of time. So I'm not going to talk more on a historical or a scholarly perspective, but from my personal perspective as a lay person, and to you as an average person, or you're a scholar as well, to be wary of this. When people try to control their children or the society or the wives, in very dogmatic approaches and a fundamentalist approach, right? This becomes, you're creating misery to that person's heart, right? So I didn't want my children not to have any religion because I was someone who was very religious, nor did I want to force them into any religion or anything. I just went and they came voluntarily with me. And my wife at the time, as you know, I've got multiple divorces, but in the first marriage was a long-standing, substantive relationship, and I had 2 children there, and I spent most of my time, with them, because I was self-employed and I could, do that, and I made my business a home-based business to have a stronger, nurturing influence as well as a nurturing relationship with them. Yes, I put them into preschool and creches and so forth for them to have exposure to other cultures, other communities, and so forth, and where they could also learn in a non-academic fashion. It was a Montessori school. So from a very young age, they went there. So when I tied up most of my outside appointments and business, then I came and fetched them as soon as possible, usually after, midday or towards afternoon, and spent time with them. And as a parent, that was one of my happiest days of my life, having spent so much of time, with them and being part of their growing up until they start to become teenagers, right? Just before they could become teenagers, for the first 10 years of their life. And I understood from a psychology perspective that the first 7 years is the foundational years. And I always spoke to them as though they were like adults. And family members who observed the way I spoke to them and what the type of relationship I had with them, as well as my ex-wife at the time, always commented that they are not adults, and I'm talking to them as though they are like explaining things to them in depth, not in a childlike manner, in very detail. But when I spoke to them, I understood that they're going to become adults, and whatever I'm saying is going to become tapes in the subconscious mind. And I always wanted them to have an expanded view of everything, right? And so whenever I went to any religious service or ceremony and so forth, irrespective of the culture in which it was, I never spoke negatively, and I always explained to them from my perspective, right? So coming back to perspective from a yoga meditation point of view, as most of you know, I had my first enlightenment or awakening experience, a massive explosive experience just as I had turned 19. I was about 2 months into turning 19, right? It was during the December holidays, and I come originally from South Africa. So the main summer, South Africa in Southern Hemisphere summer is in the December period, and Christmas and New Year, of course, is in that period. So it is a major holiday, like the summer holidays in July, in the US. So that's similar in South Africa in December. And our academic year, schools run from January till the end of November. And December is a huge school break. And that was the break during, studies and university time and so forth, in which I had more time to spend on the esoteric practices. And it was a mantra that I was introduced to and just trying out, and that started to develop within I think from the first 3 days I noticed something different, something changing in me, like a blissfulness starting to grow inside me that was something that I had never experienced before and was extraordinary, something to be curious about, and it was continuously growing until it went to an explosive level, right? So there are, according to the yogic sciences, different major chakras, right? Although there are minor and major chakras, but they usually talk about the 7 chakras, right? And let's stick to the usual academic principles, but there are, of course, a total of 114. And from the book, The Serpent Power of Sir John Woodroffe, or Arthur Avalon was his pen name, that was authored with. So you can search for these books online. And on YouTube, I know there is a version of this. I think the name of the channel is Advaita Atma. If you go to the playlist, you'll find there's a playlist of a number of books from him and other other authors as well, and multiple books from him as well. And the Serpent Power is, the amazing thing is he researched it from multiple angles and opinions from the same culture, right? So, for example, in regards to the nadis, or the subtle energy channels, which correlates to the grosser form of the nadis, can be correlated to the nervous system, but it is much more than that and more subtle. And he himself says it's not the nervous system, but the nervous system is a grosser manifestation of the grosser aspect of a very complicated and intricate network of energy channels. So he quoted 3 authentic scriptures, right? In those scriptures, he said the one scripture says there is 72,000 nadis. A second scripture that he quoted the name of the scripture so people can refer it, says there's 300,000, and a third one that says 350,000. So also in tantric traditions, right, because serpent power kundalini comes from tantra, actually, the word. It's not in Vedanta. There's no word such as kundalini in the Vedic scripts, but it's from the agamas and tantric literature, which Tantra supports and mentions Vedanta in it, Vedic scripts in it. And the Vedic scripts don't mention much about agamas, and Tantra. So Tantra is based on agamas, which is considered an oral tradition, and which was written down between 800 and 1200 years ago, right, put in writing. But it was passed down orally. And so there they mention, the position of the chakras as well. So there's huge discrepancies on what the position of the chakras, but and he mentions the different schools of thought, what they mention. And like, for example, they say the root chakra is in the sacral area, and the third eye region is on the crown of the head, and it's all upside down, that the heart chakra is in the throat. And they're not calling it the heart. We in English saying it's a heart chakra, right? So, and then, they had to bring some type of understanding. Then he tried to speak about the nerve plexus and the different regions of the spinal bones, right? So there is the coccygeal region, the sacral region. Coccygeal region got 4 fused bones, and the sacral region has got 5 fused bones that makes up part of the spinal column. And then the lumbar region, I think it says got 10 or 12, 20, but there's a lumbar region of bones. I even went to a medical school and anatomy, I forgot, and that was decades ago. And then, of course, there's the thoracic region and the cervical region. Cervical region, of course, has got 7. the thing, and he's trying to correlate and bring a fusion between modern science and the ancient Vedic sciences. So he mentioned that the Indian cultures, they will not touch a dead body, in the sense that they will not dissect it. And Western science has dissected and opened up cadavers to look at what is inside and the nerve plexus and trace the nerves and so forth. And he tried to correlate the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system and the vagus nerve and how it moves from the medulla oblongata downwards and what is inside the spinal column and the gray matter, white matter, and the fine, thread that is spoken about, in different terms in the Indian languages, and they refuse to deviate from their belief and don't want to bring that fusion between. They just says no, that these the 7 major chakras, they are physically in the spine. It's physically there. Then he said, welcome, we can cut it open. There's no chakra there, but there's a nerve plexus that could be correlated to some of the chakras, especially the 7 major ones. And they say, no, it's physically there, right? They don't want to budge, dogmatically, they're believing in that. And then he's bringing, and there are some more open-minded members from the scientific communities in India, and the professors. Then he mentioned them, and they were people. This is now during 1918 period, that agreed and start to bring about a fusion between what is physically found in the nervous systems and what is spoken of about the nadis and the energy centers. So, but of course, there isn't 72,000 network of nerves, right? And there isn't 300,000 nor 350,000. So sometimes I'm writing comments, or read some of the comments in the some of the podcasts that I follow, and there are some Indian podcasts like Shloka that I follow, because the podcast endeavors to be more modernized from a modern perspective, and the questions that they pose to their guests is from a journalistic point of view, because it is a podcast channel that's available on YouTube. I don't know if it's on a podcast itself, but on a podcast platform, but on the YouTube channel called Shloka, and I think it's from Times of India, and the host is a lady by the name of Rangoli Sharma, and her accent is absolutely amazing. She's got a very unique accent, and the type of questions and that she's asking is a modern day perspective, a very skeptical pushback type of questions that any modern type. So we listen to, then we read some of the comments, and sometimes you read the comments that why, that they push back against tantric practices, because there is the left-hand part that accepts things like meat eating and animal sacrifice, right? Amongst, other things like fish and alcohol and mudras, and I think a sex element as well, right? Intimacy element, and which is widely, discriminated against or commented against. But let's take one factor, which is very painful factor, coming from the yoga meditation sciences. Everyone assumes that yoga meditation means you have to be a vegetarian, because they think yoga is the foundation of yoga is the Yoga Sutras written by Patanjali, which is estimated should be between 1,500 to 1,900 years ago, right? So it's the post-Christian, post-Christ era, right? after the, now they call it the common era, part of the common era, before the common era and after the common era, right? So they're no longer mentioning before the death of Christ and after the death of Christ, because they're trying to keep a broader terminology, so that the world calculation of time and events is not based on a religion, right, on Christianity, but based on something that we want to agree on universally, incorporating, other religions and so forth, right? Which is a commendable thing, right? This is the way to go, to keep an open mind. Before I go into the meat-eating comment, in my early age of the enlightenment experience and the chakras that I'm talking about, specifically there is two chakras of mention, right? The heart chakra, when that opens, so for you to have enlightenment experience, your life force energy has to shoot up to the crown of the head, right? Or the crown of the head becomes activated and surges energy down throughout the entire, so every cell is vibrating with the energy, and you go into a total immersive blissful state. So which means all 7 chakras are also being activated or vibrated with this energy in addition to everything else, right? It's not like when I had the experience, say, wow, I can feel this chakra is vibrating, that. But now in my daily Kriya practice, when I'm raising the life force energy up and down, I feel the pulsation of the different chakras. And now, even without the Kriya practice, I can focus on an energy center and I feel like a throbbing sensation in there, right? So, according to the theory, when the heart chakra is activated or awakened, then you feel universal love. Love for others, love, empathy for others, not only humans, all of creation, including the animal, plant, and the physical environment. You start having care for the planet, you care for the mountains, care for preservation of the soil, right? That you don't want to just step on grass unnecessarily, and just walk across it. So there was one incident in Dubai, and we had to go for a meeting, and we were a group of people together. And there was one gentleman, he was walking with me, he liked the way I spoke and so forth. And we had to go from our car, and we had to go around the building to the main entrance. And of course, as you know, Dubai is surrounded by grass and trees and flowers and plants, and they spend a lot of money to maintain that, because it's a desert region, not a natural environment for it to thrive. But they spend a lot of money to have a sprinkler system, special fertilizers and so forth, and special soil that is brought in so that it's a ideal environment for these plants to grow. And I come originally from South Africa, where it's a beautiful, natural, scenic environment, right? And I always loved gardening and taking care of plants from childhood. So we were walking to the entrance, and a lot of people took a shortcut across a grassy section because they didn't want to walk all the way around. They found and there was a footpath already cut into there. So there's grass, and there was supposed to be grass in that footpath, but because people were cutting through all the time, grass stopped growing there, right? And I said, and I mean, there was sparse amounts of grass. And I said, he said, let's go this way. I said, no, let's walk around, because we're going to kill the grass. The people are already killing it. A pathway is already formed there. He said, what? I can't believe you caring for the grass. It was that you don't want to, damage the growth or hinder the growth or harm the growth, but everyone else is doing it. So what is one person, me not going, it's not going to make any difference. It's not going to start making the grass to thrive. But my heart couldn't bring myself to do it, right? And he was very surprised. He said, what an amazing heart and thinking. He never thought of it that way. And he was mind blown that I could think that way, right? So also the throat chakra is where you get the dogmatism gets removed. There's no good and no bad. You don't suddenly become averse to something very negative, nor do you become fanatical about something that you conceive to be positive, right? So, for example, there are serial killers in the prison systems, and also, of course, living amongst us. Don't put your finger in fire, you're going to get burnt. So I'm not saying go and speak lovingly to serial killers and to hardened criminals and drug dealers. These people are hardened people. They will not hesitate. We don't know how many people they've murdered cold-heartedly, and they feel pleasure in murdering, but they're coming from some obtuse psychosis in their childhood. Maybe they were beaten up and put into a small little cage, and treated like animals, and they have a very negative psychotic idea and version and viewpoint of certain things, and that makes the sickness for them to do these type of things, right? Because one thing, according to psychology science that I studied, is that even the worst serial killer in the prison system, he has a justification for why he did something. He feels in that time when he's doing it, he's got a very good reason why he's doing it. And he's not just doing it because he's getting joy out of the pain of others. Yes, he exhibits that externally, but he feels there is something he's doing, that he's eliminating some type of harm in society, right? Like Jack the Ripper, right? He was trying to eliminate the scourge of prostitution, in his mind. This is a scourge and a vermin and like a plague. He's cleansing society. He felt he's doing that, right? And that by him ripping these people, capturing these women and ripping them apart and making them, torturing them before they died, is like trying to prevent them from the suffering of hell and go to heaven, because making them suffer before they die, let them suffer that few days or moments, with him, that they purge and understand their sin, purging them of their sin, right? I'm someone, I feel heartfelt for grass, to walk on grass, right? I'm not condoning what, I'm just telling you a viewpoint of every person, everyone, right? So the throat chakra brings about a balance that you can go into a war situation and fight. Like in the Bhagavad Gita, it's a conversation between the historical figures of Krishna and Arjuna, where Arjuna is asking Krishna for advice, and he says, for the sake of wealth or property or a kingdom, I must kill my own relatives and the massive army that's gathered in front of them. No, rather, why should we murder? We shouldn't. Let's practice ahimsa, non-violence. And Krishna says, no. Sometimes, when good arguments fail, violence is necessary. You can't allow a certain type of rule to continue. You need to come take over to bring about a different rule that is more humane for society, or that is more balanced. His duty was, he needed a kingdom and he must kill according to his duty. We have to think it from the 21st century philosophy perspective, that one of the reasons was because they need to own a kingdom, they must kill. Is that a reason? You're going to think from the lens of the 21st century, right? So don't look at it from that lens, right? And that it is, in some senses, some people feel it is metaphorical, that sometimes you have to do something that you dislike in order to bring about a better good. Like you have to go through the discipline of going to all the lectures and studying for the exams. It's like those who studying, it's like the worst nightmare of your life, student life and examination life, right? And it's especially if you had been to medical school where the volume of knowledge is so great, or law school where the volume is even not only great but also very nuanced, right? Because different, it's very philosophical, right? In the law and medical science. I've been both to medical school and law school, and I found people used to say that medical science is so great and this thing, but for me, law is much. I found because it is more nuanced in its thinking and deeper from a philosophical perspective, because you're making decisions on what is right and wrong. In medical science, it's factual. What are the symptoms and what's the treatment, right? And analyzing, from a very clinical perspective, not about justice, bringing about justice, principles of balancing the principles of law, the principles of the community, and the better good, and a judge has a very major responsibility, in bringing about that. So this is in the Visuddhi chakra. When that awakens, you can keep a neutral mind on, and normally someone whose Visuddhi chakra is awakened and starting to develop, each chakra takes long to, it can take multiple lifetimes, it can take thousands of years actually, because it keeps developing and developing and developing, and it develops more, and each chakra develops more, your consciousness widens. You start to be more understanding and more embracing and more live and let live attitude, right? That each person should have the right to his own opinion and live according to his own belief systems, right? You can mention why you feel he's wrong, that he's going to be, you feel he'll be benefited more, and why he'll be benefited more if he follow the scientific approach, or he follow the Christian approach, or he follow atheistic approach, or remove, religion from his life in that situation, or try to be more neutral to bring about balance and harmony in the homes, because people of multiple cultures are now marrying, and family members, there's no family that has all the members all in one culture, right? Some people are spiritual, some people are Buddhists, some people are, Christians, some people are Catholics, some people are Jewish, minority, in the world, only about 15 million people, which is a sad thing. It's a very ancient religion, and why it's dying out. It's like, to see something dwindle when the Christianity is going to 2.3 billion, Islam is growing to like 1.7 billion, and Judaism 15 million. But the Judeo-Christian religions coming from Judaism, right, original, is 15 million, extreme imbalance. So it's like a sadness in my heart for that, because something old, it's like it's dying, it's like someone is sick. A culture also becomes sick, and it's, disappearing. So coming back to the two chakras, of course, we got 114 chakras. Everything has got its importances, right? But especially for us in this discussion on the religions and dogmatism and fundamentalism, to be wary of these things, you try to focus, and also from a perspective of energy healer, we do chakra unblocking, and I design my own methodology where I want feedback from my patient or my client, that they can see the light in their mind's eye. It comes like flashes in the mind's eye, the colors, and I know that that particular chakra is now awakened. From the theory, when they see green light, means that the heart is awakened. From light blue light, it's the throat chakra that's open. But I didn't physically feel a pulsation of that chakra when I saw that color light. When I saw the light, I didn't know the lights belonged to the chakras at the time when I was, seeing the lights in a neophyte level of that type of practice, because it's called tratika or something, right? Where you, it's a type of meditation practice. You stay at a point or a light, but they say you must not blink till your eyes is burning. That is not the way I learned. I learned blink when it's necessary, but you keep your mind focused gently on that point and keep bringing it to that point with the open eye meditation method. Very effective for beginners, right? That meditation method, which is taught by, in a systematic manner, by a group of people or an organization called the Brahma Kumaris. And they try to teach it in a non-sectarian way. And you can come from any religion, any culture. They have free training courses on meditations worldwide, right? Probably in almost every country, there should be a center near you that you can, find online and connect with them and go for their classes, and they will show you the method. It's amazing. It's in the English language, and they have guided meditation CDs without any religion involved in those things, right? And which is amazing. And they teach that method. If someone had to learn, if you want to learn meditation, I would recommend start with that method, right? It is so amazing, right? So coming back to that and seeing the colors, but I see it and I make sure that my patients, so the main colors they see is the 7 colors, and first they usually see white light, and after the white light then they normally see the different colors of the rainbow, the red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, right? Or they call purple, right? So they say purple, they say blue. I say what blue? Light blue or dark blue? Navy blue, like very dark blue, right? Representing indigo, in my mind. And then light blue, like powder blue, right? So according to what I analyze, the throat chakra is like a very light powder blue. When I saw that, I start to feel so much of peace in me and not feeling that hatred for my enemies and people that did harm to me, and I just stay away from them. And there are people, very close relatives of mine, very close blood relatives, that they've done things that they've crossed the line, right? If I have to look at it from purely objective perspective, that's a line that you should not have crossed, right? A friend in need is a friend indeed. And the time when I needed them most, and I expected them, they are family, they should have, and I didn't ask them to give, I didn't want something big from them, just to come, and there was, to take some type of, my luggage or something, I'm in a problem, just, for safekeeping, just keep this, and me did so much for them. And then I just needed a small favor in return, and they didn't. And I didn't hate them and that I'm going to revenge that they did this harm to me for that. I leave it out. Coming from a revenge principle, I'm in business and I have a philosophy never to lend money. Never, ever. I don't lend, I give. If I'm able to lend, means I've got money that is possible for me to live without. Sometimes it was important money that I needed, but if I gave it and their situation was so detrimental that they needed it more than me, and I immediately cleared my bank accounts and I gave it large amounts, 100,000, right? Millions, right? I cleared and gave it. I had nothing, left with nothing, and I gave it because they were in such a difficult situation, right? And it was like people can commit suicide, when they're in a very big difficulty, and you can save them. And they came to you for help, and I gave. And when you ask something small in return, something that is not even gonna make a dent in them, in a time of need, I thought I could turn to these people because a one good turn deserves another, right? And they refused, point blank, and some of them blocked me and didn't talk to me. They never say no. Most of them never said they felt, but some people said. I said, look, I remember I helped you so much, so I'm not asking you for the money back, what you took from me. I'm just asking the small amount because I'm in this situation. And there was a situation where I had to, just before I could lose my eyesight, and I was undergoing treatment and I needed to go for an urgent operation. And I couldn't raise that money instantly. I had access to money and I wanted to borrow it so that I don't want to lose time, because it was urgent, because I was busy losing my eyesight. And I said, in a few weeks' time, in just 2 to 4 weeks, I'll return the money. And a small amount of money, I wanted. I said, I just want that and I will return it. And the person came about, returned point blank, I never ever took someone else's money. And I never took your money ever. And, started to talk harshly. And of course, still, while refusing, right, to help me and so forth, and saying why I'm saying that. And fortunately, the time when he took that money was through legal documents and papers through an attorney, right? All I need to do is, and these were registered transactions because I used to be speculating in real estate. I used to buy houses in auctions and renovate them and sell them, and I gave him signing power of attorney when I was out of the country, and to take the money and transfer it to me. But he took the money and kept it for himself, right? So we've got that transaction. And I said, hey, if I point this thing out and so forth, and that is making this type of derogatory statements against me, and they really dogmatically speaking negatively, I said it's fine. So in my life I never lent, I gave, because I could live. And I'm now 30 years as an entrepreneur, so I can't count how many people, how many clients owe me money, right? Millions and millions and millions, right? In US dollars or this thing, right? There's one person that owes me about $10 million, for example, right? And so many, I can't count how many people owe me money, right? Well over, I would say, $1 billion in US dollars. If I have to focus my life, leave everything and just focus on, collecting money due to me, that could have been, now it's not due because I never say I'm lending, right? If I had said I'm lending, and I never do that. And if legally owing to me as well, right? By right, I have a right to sue a lot. I never sued a single client. I said, how can you sue your own client, right? This was once your client. Do you now, your client refusing to pay you, you sue your client? No, this is one of those rogue clients. I don't want clients to have the view that if they decide not to pay me, that I'm going to go after them and become their enemy, and they're going to see the wrath of Osman. No, there's no wrath. You come to me for my service, you come to me for my help, this is my fee, and we agree to the payment. If you don't pay, I'm not going to fight you on it, right? We'll write all the documents and everything, right? And I'll try to secure myself in the transaction. I'm not going to go into foolish transactions, right? But very often it's down to trust element, and I can use the document to sue them, right? So we're using the agreement as a protection measure, that in the event they decide not to pay, that I have a right to sue them, and also so that they can't turn around and say, no, they don't owe me. So I've got it. So I asked them, of course they owe me. I asked them once or twice, you owe me. But if they say they don't owe me and they're not going to pay me, I don't fight them. Never sued anyone that I lent money to and took them to court or made their life a living nightmare. There was one time I was in a very difficult situation. I lent money and the person said he'll pay me back, and I was in a desperate situation and I needed it, and he said, okay, he'll give it back, and I said, look, I'm sorry, I normally wouldn't ask the money back, although he promised to give it back. And he was someone of means. He had his own business as well. He had his own income. He's living, right? And he could raise money. It was a very small amount of money as well. He said, okay, I'll give it to you tomorrow. He's not saying I don't have it now and I don't know where to get it from and so forth. If he told me that, I wouldn't, keep asking him. So I asked him 2 or 3 times, and he gave me part of it, I think. And then I'm seeing he's struggling. I wrote it off. I didn't want to, push, right? So when people do harm to me, because I don't want to hold that hatred and that revenge, that negative feeling, it festers in my own heart and causes negative for me. The hatred emotion. I don't want to have the negative emotion. Sometimes I watch these movies, and I love watching movies when I had eyesight. When I see it's going negative, especially horror movies, I walk out of it. I didn't come to entertain myself, to go into a negative emotional. Sometimes, it's a thriller and you observing it, but it goes to extreme measures and you go into shock, and suddenly the music comes and it like jolts you. I don't want to be shocked and come out like I've been to a nightmare, and I come away. I don't want to be. Sometimes there are some serials that I listen to currently. They write the story in a very irritating way, in order to keep a next episode, to keep the story winding and twisting and bending. Like this character, he's got money and his old family don't know how rich he is, and they keep insulting him. He's a house husband and he only cooks at home, but meanwhile he's a multi-billionaire, the heir to a massive fortune, but he doesn't want them to know because he wants to keep his identity low. And things like that. And when they're insulting him, you feel this intense that whether, even if I have no money, I wouldn't take insults from the people I'm living with. And then your own wife is insulting you, and then you go and live in the servants' quarters, sleep there. A woman insult me, I must not share a bedroom. Thank you. And it's her house. Thank you. I will leave. I will not live live like that, right? Because even if I'm going to be homeless, I'll be proudly homeless than to be a dog under someone else's roof, right? Yeah, I have my pride as well. But I'm not going to hate that person. Hatred, the negative emotion that you have, is harmful to you. Yes, you believe strongly about certain things. You believe strongly that Jesus is the only way and everything else is, worshipping the idols and the stones. This is paganism in your heart. That's your belief. Okay, you believe that, but the person who's doing it don't believe it. They've got their reasons for their belief. Live and let live. Who knows who's right? Myself, like with my children, as they were growing up, my daughter asked me, because I taught my children to have an open mind, as well as train them in the Islamic religion. I reverted to it at my age of 38, when my children were like still reasonably young, around 8 years old, or 9 years old at the time. And then was the first time I'm teaching them a formal practice of a religion, right? Because there's a prayer involved, compulsory 5 times a day and so forth. Then as they were becoming teenagers and so forth, and they didn't want to pray all the time and so forth, and they're neglectful. I just reminded them, it's part of the religion that this thing, but I never forced them. And my daughter, I taught her how to wear the hijab and so forth. And she used to wear it, in my presence, because I was divorced from my first wife at the time. Whenever she came, on alternate weekends, so she wore it because I wanted her to learn and have the habit how to, at least in the alternate weekends when she came to me while she was growing. But as she was becoming 15, 16, then I said, look, I know at home she's not wearing the hijab, right? And the other weekend when she's with the mother, she's not wearing. The only time is when she's with me, because this is part of her. I wanted her to have an identity and a culture that she knows that she belongs to, a sense of belonging. But I never enforced it and forced it. And when she turned 15, 16, I said, look, from now on, if you don't feel like wearing, if you feel you don't want to wear the hijab, even in my presence, you don't have to. She says, really? I said, yes, you don't have to, because all I wanted to teach her to know, to have that habit that in her adult life, if she wants to have a sense of belonging to any community or any culture or something, that there is something, and it won't be something that is foreign to her. It's something that she's used to. She knows how to pray, she knows how to wear, and it's something that's part of a habit that she learned and was trained under, not foreign to it, right? and that she must do things out of choice, right? And when she was around 16, she says, look, in my school, it's a Christian school, and they have church services and so forth there. Is it a sin for me to attend? I said, no, they're worshipping. They said, all the students have to attend. It's a Christian school. You have to do the prayer, in the morning or something, right? And I think there's certain Bible studies class or something. And is it? I said, no, when you're in that situation, you have to, there's no harm. It's a requirement in that school, and they're getting a very good education, private school education. And I'm not against, other cultures, and I want them to be multicultural. And then later on, as she was growing, I think 18 or 19 or around 20, she was a student, and she says, look, I prefer the Christian religion. And in Islam, they say if you're not allowed, if you leave Islam, you become an apostate. And to be an apostate, the punishment is death by the sword, according to the common understanding, right? I said, look, if your heart is there, you are free. She said, really? But it says this. I said, that is a fundamentalist viewpoint of maybe the majority viewpoint of the current majority of the Muslims. But if we look at the earlier times, I didn't see any the Prophet's traditions that he was taking the sword for people who didn't pay the taxes, that he murdered them, and that if they didn't follow the religion of Islam, that he murdered them with the sword. Later on, yes, the rulers that succeeded after his death, that were part of his companions, were strict in the rule. They ruled by the sword, yes, right? And so their rule is respected. But I said, they know the Prophet. The Prophet didn't do it, right? He's an example, and the Quran says, the Quran is very clear. So even the tradition, some people say the Prophet said this, and other traditions say, no, he said the opposite. Some say it's false, you have to, rule by that if you leave the religion, you must chop your head. Other people say, no, you can, to kill a human, what the Quran says, to kill one human is as though you killed all of humankind. To kill, so I'm not bringing Islam, I'm bringing a perspective on religion, right? So I also talk, because I don't want to only talk about Jewish or the Christian, and I'm also bringing Islam and Hinduism about idol worship, right? And Buddhism I'll bring into this argument as well, right? So you should not sing. And in the time of the Prophet, they didn't do it. I'm bringing my own daughter, right? My example from my life, because I don't want to talk theoretically. I'm talking from my experience. I said, look, I'm telling you that is not. I don't believe that is the true version of what it is. It is where you're causing harm to people. Doing suicide bombs and all that. This is to harm people, killing yourself and killing innocent people and destroying buildings and all is barbaric behavior, in my opinion. So yes, I'm saying this in a public platform, and yes, I identify as a Muslim, but I will say it, right? Barbaric, right? And I told my daughter, yes, you want to be, no problem. You believe, follow what is in your heart. And she started to follow the Christian religion, attend church, because her mother remarried and her husband was of the Christian faith, and she followed the Christian faith. And their home, my children were growing up with their mother, and I wanted them to grow up with their mother, because the mother is very important, right? Because the mother is the one that's got the connection with you, gave birth to you, spent 9 months, and there is a cellular connection, because they found in certain cells of the mother, they were surprised to find a Y chromosome. How can a woman have a Y chromosome? It's a male. But they find the Y chromosome only in women who had given birth to sons. So through the placenta, some of these things transfers, and Dr. Bruce Lipton has found the metaphysical, every cell has got a connection to the quantum field. And is it surprising that mothers have a connection with their children, permanent connection? It was part of her cells, part of her body. That connection is eternal, will always be there, that quantum connection, right? So that's why I prioritize the mother. And when the mother said things and they were complaining to me, I said, no, that's your mother. End of the day, even I disagreed with what the mother said, even in my mind, right? But I didn't say, and when my daughter brought it up, my daughter know I'm very objective, that I will side with what is just. But I said, doesn't matter what, it's still your mother. And you have to respect her. You are still a minor. You're not an adult. When you're an adult, you're self-supporting, not living under your mother's roof. Make your rules. It's her house, her rules. Follow. You have to respect her rules and respect her requirements and her laws. Yes, I don't have that law with me, but that's your mother. Have respect. Don't talk back to your mother. No matter what she says, don't talk back. There were instances in my life, my parents did things that I disagree. Well, whose parents do things that children don't? If you're human, you're going to have dissonance, right? But I never raised my voice and screamed at them and spoke to them disrespectfully. Even they said things that you must not set foot in my house, I'm writing you off, you change to Islam, and I'm disinheriting you, and so forth. I never disrespected, and I always contacted and spoke to them with respect, right? Because they're your parents, right? Doesn't mean I have to go there and be cuckolded, or become like a sheep under them and be ruled and be like a dog or be trampled. Stay away, and live on my own independence, right? So with my own children, when it came to religion, I gave them freedom. And then when my daughter married, she married someone of the Hindu faith, right? And I saw the pictures, of her wedding photos, that she's wearing the Hindu type of dress and so forth. I mean, she's following the Christian faith, and she's following, because her husband, future husband, the person she's marrying, is of that faith, and she's following it. I didn't connect with her and say, why are you doing these traditions of the Hindu tradition? Aren't you Christian? Or something. I leave it. I kept quiet. She's an adult. She's not only an adult, she's a graduate, and she's a professional now. And at the time when she's marrying, she's a professional, and I'm not going to interfere in her decisions. And even as children, I spoke to them openly. What do you feel? And why I feel what they did is wrong. And we want to come to a situation where they agree that what they did is wrong, and they used to, I never beat them, right? I used to talk to them at length, usually up to 90 minutes, for them to understand why certain thing is so dangerous for them to, do in their life as a practice, and why it's so important, because there are some things which is important that some parents just scream and shout at them and beat the children to a pulp. And instead of doing a rather this thing, and they used to get tired and said, okay, we understand, right? They used to stop me at usually the 90-minute mark, right? So in my upbringing, I grew up in my mother's home. My parents were divorced when I was 5 years old. And my mother believed that it's a heinous sin to eat animal meat, right? And if we were found touching or eating meat, we were beaten to a pulp. We were afraid to touch. And and she would just give one look with her eyes. If we went visiting and they were offering food and if we decided to taste or touch, meat, the meat food, so everyone else had meat, and they gave vegetarian food to her and us. And we had to just eat that. And in school, they used to have functions where they were giving meals, and we had to eat the vegetarian portions of the meal. And it's like I was the only one. There were only like one or two in my entire class were eating vegetarian meals. And I wanted to eat them, but I was afraid, because if someone told my mom that I ate the meat, because she will find out what food did the school give in this occasion and what did you eat, and she'll find out from my friends and so forth. If that slips to her, I would be beaten to a pulp. And she believes that there shouldn't be any relationship between male and female before marriage. There's girlfriend is a heinous sin, right? Or building a relationship or getting to know. And when I was in high school, it was common for people to have a girlfriend, and girls liked me and I like girls as well, but I was afraid to have a girlfriend because she used to ask other students randomly when she met, you know my son? Yes. Does he have a girlfriend? No, no, who does he join during the breaks? Is he talking to girls or is he talking to boys? And she knows who's my friends because she told me that if she finds out I got a girlfriend, she would chop me in the front yard before I can enter and bury me in the front yard. And I believed at that time that she's going to do it, right? I believed it seriously. And when she beat us when we were small, she was going to, like coming from the ancient cultures, you were beaten. If you listen to Russell Peters, right? His stand-up comedy. So how someone is gonna get someone's gonna get a beating or a hiding today, right? His father used to always say in a cryptic way, like no one knows who it is, but he knew it's gonna be him. But he had a hope that it's not him. And they get beaten to a pulp, if you don't obey. That's the way in that culture in the olden day. I didn't bring that. I was brought up with that culture. I didn't use that culture on my children. I never used that I didn't try to dictate to them that you should eat this and don't eat that, right? Follow this and don't follow that, with my own this thing. And imagine, when I was in university, I wanted to go to a university very far away from home because I felt after 18 I'm an adult and I must make my own decision. I should be free if I want to eat meat, then I want to. And I found, because I grew up, I was not comfortable eating meat, grew up, as a vegetarian. So in the university where I was living, it was designed as a omnivore diet, right? And if you want to eat I tried to eat a vegetarian diet. I was ending up eating mainly a toasted cheese and tomato or rice with gravy, right? This is the gravy has got no meat in it. It's just like made with onions and tomato and so forth, and rice. And I can have toasted cheese and tomato and chips. Now I'm a student. I was in medical university at the time. And then after a few months or several weeks, I said, if I'm going to continue like this, where's my nutrition? I won't be able to study. I'm going to go into a nutritional deficiency. And it's going to be I need to, I need to eat a balanced diet. I have to eat meat in this. But so I discussed this with my colleague, right? We were roommates. He was also, studying to be a doctor like me at that time. So a very intelligent guy. And I told he was, okay, but you haven't eaten meat before. Let me buy the meal. Before you decide to start eating the meat, let me buy that meal for you, that virgin meal, right? And let me take you out. And he took me to a casino that was nearby. And the casinos is like a five-star restaurant type of situation, from a student's perspective, right? And he said, what is it you want? I said, no, I don't know what it is to eat a burger only. He said, no, I choose something nice, seafood, lobster. I said, no, I don't know, because I grew up always watching American movies and people having burgers, and it sounded like an amazing thing. He said, okay, let me buy. And I remember when it came, I said, how do people eat this? I brought it to my mouth. It's not fitting. It's like it was too big. He said, no, squeeze it and bite from one side. Right? That was so sad that I had to go to that. And that I was like terrorized as a child and in extreme fear when I'm eating, right? If I have to eat meat, right? And eating it in trepidation, like I'm doing like some type of sin. And then I see online these comments about people who's doing the tantric, they're sacrificing animals, that how can you kill animals? You're doing harm and so forth. The comment, they said, my friend, my brother, your opinion is it's a sin, not the opinion of other people. You keep your opinion. I respect that's your opinion. You want to do, keep it for you. Other people don't. Their belief in their religion, they call sacrificing animal, right? I think it was one of the prophets, Prophet Abraham, that had to sacrifice his son, requested, by God to sacrifice. And he took his son and agreed, and he was ready to, and he took the knife and put his throat down and wanted to cut his neck, and he changed into the lamb, and it was a sacrificial lamb, right? And the Muslims still practice that, to this day, in the Eid al-Adha time, right? And everyone doesn't feel it's a sin to eat meat. The Judeo aspect of the Judeo-Christian religion, they don't eat pork, to this day, and they don't eat fat, and it is kosher meat, right? And that is their opinion, their viewpoint. And you see sometimes food got a mark, kosher mark. I will eat it. It's food. No problem for me, right? And of course, I don't eat pork and so forth, right, as a Muslim. But before I reverted to Islam, I used to eat it. There was no bar to eat that I shouldn't. But in Islam is a bar to it, so I don't, because I'm following a pathway. I don't. But I once we went to a weekend with in one of my fourth marriage, right? We went for a weekend retreat to a 5-star location, and we were the only guests in that location, and we had the private beach to ourselves. It was so amazing, I remember. And they decided to, surprise us and cook an amazing meal, and it had pork bits in it, right? So they brought the dish. The chef he went into great trouble to prepare this meal for us and so forth. So I took the pork parts and put it aside and ate the rest of the meal. I'll never take the plate and throw it in his face and throw it as I'll not touch it. It's a sin. Okay, I don't eat pork. Okay, I'll eat it. There's maybe a drop of fat from the pork fell into the rice or into the, this. Okay, don't be so dogmatic, right? Because you learn to live and let live. This is why people being murdered, massacred across. Not only, to murder people is the physically you're killing them, but you also kill people by hurting their heart. Your own wife at home, you keep putting down, or your husband, nagging him, is useless, not saying anything positive. In my first marriage, there was so much of toxicity that no matter what I did was never right, was never good enough. And I struggled to be successful, holding a job, plus, delivering pizza and all that. I'm spoken to like a dog and this thing. And that's why when I watch the serials, where people are downtrodden as a man, because I sometimes cook the meals and I help, to wash the dishes and, sometimes hand wash clothes, right? Because I was, as the stay-at-home dad, right? And I ran my business from home, and eventually I earned in exponentially more, right? But there were times when I earned like very little, and my wife was like the breadwinner for several years, right? And mine was, whether my income was there or not there, was insignificant. She was, like this thing, and she spoke in ways that really made me feel so negative that I adopted. In that marriage, I became insulin dependent diabetic. I was taking 5 insulin injections a day for 10 years in the marriage. Eventually, I became chronic cholesterol, and I had to take medication, chronic medication for cholesterol, the doctor said, for the rest of my life. And I became chronic high blood pressure, and I had to take chronic blood pressure medications for the rest of my life. And as the months and years were passing, my health markers were deteriorating until I got my first, second, and third major heart attacks. And the doctor recommended that I needed to go for a heart bypass, and he made the appointment for me to see the cardiologist. And even during that period when my health markers were going downhill, he even referred me to dietitians for my diet, and he made sure that I'm exercising. And I ate the right diet according to what the dietitian told me. I exercised according to how I should exercise, in fact, more so than that. And I even took up the sport of golf, and I used to go to the driving range on almost a daily basis, spending about 2 hours in the driving range, soaking wet, right? Soaking wet just driving. You're thinking golf is such a calm game. Try going and practicing hitting balls, right? You get wet, wet, soaking wet more than a gym, right? Sweating. It is, you can become highly fit from it, right? He said your health markers, there's something, you are doing everything according to your nutrition, right? You are eating the portions right. You are, exercising. There's something in your life you need to remove, because if you don't, it came to a point, he said, I can't increase your insulin dosage anymore. I can't increase your blood pressure tablets more. I can't increase your cholesterol medication more, right? You've now got, getting heart attacks, and the third heart attack was very major, right? And he said something in your life is causing you to deteriorate. You need to remove it, because I estimate you got about 6 months to live. And the reason I stayed in a toxic marriage, I felt is toxic. I'm not saying negative. I mean, I am saying from my perspective, right? But doesn't mean she is negative. It was my perception, right? And the reason I stayed, so why on earth did you stay? That you come to that level? Because I didn't want my children to grow up with parents that are not together in a broken home. Because I grew up, my parents divorced at 5 years old. I wanted, my children to know there's mother and father together. And when my wife or something argued, I never argued with her in front of my children or this thing. And if I had to push back against anything, I did it in the bedroom, and when she calmed down, and she's not going to listen. She was, a certain way. That was a personality. You can't take a black cat and make it into a white cat. So to retain the peace, I had to be silent. And like for relaxing, I used to drink, to overcome the stress instead of fighting and arguing. I didn't want my children to grow up where their home is a home of arguments, right? And I'm someone spiritually awakened person. I should have patience. Patience is a quality. But patience, you shouldn't put yourself in a toxic situation where it's harming your health. So I stayed in the toxic levels, because I didn't want my children. I wanted to keep the marriage together for the sake of my children. And when the doctor said you have 6 months more to live, and I knew that, and there's something toxic in my life, I knew immediately what it was. It's my marriage that's causing this. And I didn't divorce my wife. I said, let me separate first. When I separated from her, within 14 days, within 2 weeks, okay, I didn't count exactly the days, I found I no longer needed insulin. I no longer needed the pressure medication. I no longer needed the cholesterol medication. I went for the tests, and so, I had the blood tester, right, the glucose monitor. I'm not taking the insulin. If I take the insulin, like I was going into almost a diabetic coma, right? I had to start reducing the insulin, and whenever I injected it, it's like I'm becoming almost in a coma. I had to stop it. And eventually I went to the doctor and tested, and I'm living without insulin, and my health markers improved within 2 weeks. I stopped all medication. It is now 20 years later. I still don't need, I'm going every 6 months for tests. I don't need insulin. I don't need, in fact, my heart is so healthy. My blood pressure is on the athlete's level currently, right? And I'm someone doing yoga and all that all my life. It wasn't helping me in the toxic situation. So when we're saying religion, we're saying don't bring religion to toxic levels and overrule your own children, your wife. Live and let live. For her, alcohol is not a sin. She's a Christian woman. You're a Muslim guy. You married her. You don't believe in alcohol. Don't make it a sin. Okay, your wife is Sunni. You are Shia. Your wife must say, no, I can't be with a Shia man, and, leave the marriage. And the child is growing up without parents together because the husband decided that he now feels the Shia way to be the correct path for him because his heart believes that. and not the Sunni path. And from that moment onwards, the wife says, okay, if you decide you feel Shia is correct and I'm Sunni, and Sunni doesn't accept Shia as a Muslim, I can't share the same bed, and leaves the marriage. And the child, poor little 1-year-old, 2-year-old child, is now having to grow up with the parents apart. Right? It's in my situation, right? In my life, right? And I don't know, my daughter is now 12 years old. I don't know if my daughter knows that I'm divorced. So we divorced in the Sharia court, but not in the legal court of my country. But it's legally accepted where she is living in Dubai, and she's from Morocco. In Morocco, it's legally accepted. So she doesn't care, about the South African legal. So if I want to remarry, my country of origin is South Africa, I have to do a physical divorce. So I told my ex-wife I want to do the physical divorce. She says, no, can you not do it? I want to, because she wants to get the South African passport. I said, okay, and maybe she'll want to come back and reconcile. So the reason I keep an open mind, because Dr. Phil McGraw, he is one of my mentors. He says that if you have a child, if you are married and you have a child, even if your wife is your worst enemy, even if it means you're living in the opposite ends of the house, you try to live together, find a way, go for counseling, try to turn every stone to try to fix the situation before you break it, for the sake of the child, because you got a child in the marriage. And you should try to keep the doors open. So that's why I said, okay, maybe the door. Till today, I'm thinking we are now separated for over 10 years, right? I've got the door open, and she, in between, she said she wants to reconcile, on the phone, before I lost my eyesight. And after I lost my eyesight, she stopped mentioning that and talking about that, and she stopped responding to my messages, and claiming that she's very busy and no time, and so forth, and but not even concerned about me, and totally we are cut. And eventually I find out from my daughter, I don't know for sure, that someone from Canada is sending her chocolates and so forth. And I find out from the other females who are single, if they, in a relationship with a Canadian person or something. She said, no. And I never asked if her mother asked, is it a friend of her mother or something? She said, I don't know. With other people, she said, no, the mother is. Then I didn't want to push it and bring her in the middle. I said, okay, no, good, someone giving a chocolate. And I had to know that maybe a mother is trying to move on, right? We are, according to her, divorced. But she never tell me that she's moving on. All she told me is she wants to reconcile. And I said, okay, because I'm following the Western rules, because we have a child. And our time together wasn't on the toxic level. But in my first marriage, I left it because, why? I stayed in it for the sake of the children. And I left it. I said, I'm leaving because I want to be alive, to be present for my own daughter's wedding, or and to see her graduate, right? And sadly, I wasn't able to do that, due to being in multiple countries and being in a difficult time. That time it was the COVID period, and we lost our businesses and millions of dollars that I couldn't. But when I came and tried to make amends and meet, they blocked me, and they didn't want to meet with me and so forth, right? But I didn't scream at them and say, I'm writing you up, but I stayed away. And I don't want to deal with people, and I never say, to this day, I've got 6 divorces, right? I never say something to them, any negative word that is harsh, that they are the worst piece of filth, they are a dog, this is the profane. I never use profane words. In the thing once, I just was irritated, and I just said, I used the F word, once, once on the phone only, right? And only one time, one F, and put it down. I said, no, let me not, stay away. It's very toxic for us to be together. It's more peaceful to be apart than to be together. and there were no children involved, in that. That was the sixth marriage. In the first marriage, it was for the sake of the children. I wanted to be apart, that I can be healthy again, not die within a few years. And I'm now 20 years later still alive, right? And I was part of my daughter's very difficult time in her teenage years, where she even ran away from home. But she could always speak to me, and I spoke to her, and she went back home, and she was expected to be a school dropout and an alcoholic and a party animal. And because I used to speak, I never said, her mother said, you used to call her a slut. I said, no, you're not. She said, I'm a slut. My mother called me a slut. I said, no, you are my daughter. She said, what if I do something? I'm doing so many bad things. How come you talk nicely to me? And will you accept me? I said, you're my daughter. You will always be my daughter. No matter what you do, I won't hold it against you. I will not. If I'm not your judge, I'm not here to judge you from your choice, of your lifestyle habits and so forth. You're still my daughter, and I will always respect you and love you. I will not call you, negative names, and this built a self-esteem, and she surprisingly graduated high school and graduated university. I told her, motivated her, live a balanced life, do work first, study first, and make sure you also have balance. You go, but have party after you study. Did your work for the week, and then go. Sometimes there's a party you have to attend, right? But don't make every day a party. Balance it. Focus on spending more time that every day. And she studied and she graduated university. In our country, the graduates, the people who register to university, to graduating, from registration to graduation, from first year to final year graduation, is 2% on average through correspondence, right? And she graduated correspondence while teaching and earning her own. And I'm proud of that. And I motivated other people as well, to graduate, because they need this thing. So I never go and say, you are this in the religion, you're not allowed to have boyfriends and girlfriends, and it is a sin, you must be stoned to death, you're forced to wear hijab, you must not have a boyfriend and all that. This is in the religion, you should not have, you should engage. But it's the 21st century. Life is different, and I can't judge, because God is the judge, or we don't know who's the judge, right? And what is, right and wrong. Do what you feel in your circumstances. And I feel it's wrong. Okay, I'm practicing what I feel is right and wrong. But I'm not trying to do that. In the 20 years of being a Muslim, I never miss any of my, up to this point where I'm talking to you now in this video, I'm up to date with all my 5 prayers per day, right? And even in my lectures and all that, I don't bring religion. I don't say, Hindu, and I speak much about Tantra and religion and iconography. If you listen to this thing, it is very respectfully and knowledgeably, more so than the Hindus, right? Like, for example, my video yesterday about the tantric practice to balance the tantric, that the 10 Mahavidyas or the Dasha Mahavidyas. You must, whatever mantra, you must know its corresponding opposite, equal. You must balance it with the positive and the negative energies, right? And I do that because my viewpoint is, it is frequencies, but it was coming from a very ancient culture, ancient times, that had to speak in a different language and call it. And they actually, in their words, it's just the English translation saying they are worshipping gods and goddess. But there's no, in the books, not saying, some books saying yes, worship, but not all. Some saying recite. It's a frequency. Eventually, the books itself, if you go deeper into the Hindu books, they say eventually they start with idol worship or choosing a god like a Ishta Devata. And then you go, from a concept where you treat all gods as one god. Everything is God and the tree is God. And then they say, no, there's only one God. The Dvaita concept is all God is one God. Then the higher concept is Vishta Dvaita, where you choose one God, that only Vishnu is God, only Krishna is God, or only Shiva is God, or only Shakti is God. Like, you either the Shakta part, or the Vaishnavite part, or the Saivite part. Right? The three major pathways in Hinduism you choose, that is the supreme God. So the Saivites will say Shiva is the most, is the only God, and Vishnu and Brahma and all are demigods. And then the Vaishnavites will say Vishnu, all the Vishnu aspects are God, and Shiva and all is the demigods. Shakta would say everything is Shakti. It's the divine feminine. This is the ultimate, right? And even the Kali is standing on the corpse of Shiva. They say it got different meaning, but some of the meanings is that even Shiva will be absorbed into her. Right? The Shakti and Shiva, the Kali is the form of Shakti, and even Shiva will be absorbed into. She's the ultimate reality, right? Referring to from a scientific perspective, like the dark matter. In science, you see there is normal matter and dark matter. Dark matter occupies 95% of the universe, and it's like also you have the black hole. Anything that gets absorbed becomes zero. They feel it's maybe a portal to something else, but maybe it's something also that is like the infinity of zero, that it makes something which is existing into non-existence, beyond existence and non-existence, right? It's, you get absorbed into it, into nothingness, and then coming back, the world will expand and get reabsorbed into the bindu, or the point. There is a singularity, the event, the singularity theory, right? The point that is going to go back, and that singularity is the feminine, the Shakta, or the mother, the divine feminine, or the Kali, or the Mahakali, right? And Mahakal and Mahakali, right? The male aspect is Mahakal, and that is from like existence consciousness, and is the masculine aspect, and the energetic, when it acts and does thing, and the energetic side is the feminine aspect. So it's called feminine when it's in action, and called masculine when it is the source of the energy, because energy has to come from somewhere. So the source and the activity, right, is they speaking from, in some perspective. So I'm not saying don't worship this, I'm Muslim, you should not, worship this thing. I say, okay, you are following yoga, meditation, right? Tantra is important. If you want to mention, these are alphabets. They have a sound frequency, they represent a certain frequency, and that frequency harmonizes your own energies, your own frequency. By you focusing on it, concentrating on it, you activate your connection to that level or that frequency, and you can relate to certain activities in that level. So it's like you're getting siddhis. Siddhi means perfection or ability. So once you know how to play the piano, you practice, and you become amazing at piano. You become a pianist. Then you can practice the violin, you practice, and eventually you become an amazing violinist. So you practice this sound, and you master that frequency through practice. You master that quality of embracing, like that Visuddhi Chakra, all other cultures, all other religion. Who knows what is true, what is not true? I believe this is true, and I believe that maybe you could be right, but doesn't mean I want to keep my distance. I believe fire is harmful for me, and I don't dislike fire, so I keep my distance, but I don't hate fire. I'm going to say we must now destroy fire, put a nuclear this thing and blow it up, right? Oh, I hate this political party, put a bomb there and blow up the building because I hate them so much, and they are wrong and I am right, and my religion is the only religion, right? It's the only true. No, you don't know what is right. And not only religion, your viewpoint, and even in your marriage, the way you treat your partner, your belief, your internal belief, what you believe strongly. I praise you, hats off to you, you have a strong belief, you're following, but don't force this upon others. Live and let live. If that person is doing something wrong that he feels, like you have a drug addict, right? Someone you love so much, your daughter, right? She's abusing alcohol and she's an alcoholic. You have to say it's wrong and everything, it's destroying her life, but she can't leave it until she reaches rock bottom. You can put someone in a drug rehab center. They're not going to, rehabilitate themselves until they want to. So there was the Joe Rogan podcast once. I forgot the name of the thing. So this was an actor, a famous Hollywood actor. His sister had the drug problem, and all the money that he earned, he made in the movies, he used to find her in situations where she's abusing drugs and put her in hospital where she's almost dying, and excuse me. So, and he'll put her in that, and for her to use all the money. And then after she gets better and she says, no, I won't do it. He loved his sister so much, right? And she won't do it again. Then she goes back to her drug habit. And then she goes back to rock bottom. And they call, and he finds her, he searches where she is, and she's almost dying with needles in her arm in a room where the people are of no good, and he carries her to hospital, rehab, and everything. And eventually, even the rehab centers were refusing to take her because she was a negative influence on others. And then there was one rehab center he put her in and it was extremely expensive. And if she runs away from that rehab center, they won't take her back. That is the rule there. And she ran away. Right? And he kept looking he looked for another one that was so expensive, which was costing him millions, right? All his money, acting money, is working. He couldn't even move on in his life to get married and settle down because all his money was going to someone he loved. So his sister knew her brother. Eventually she turned around and she hit rock bottom, and her brother was there he never gave up on her. Right? He never said, no, she's the drug addict, I'm writing her off. Right? And I'm guilty of that. There was someone in my life that was is a drug addict, but he's a male, and it's fully toxic. And if you put that type of person in your home, they're going to steal the television, steal everything that you have to be scared of. Your mobile phone, they're going to steal it to sell for the next fix. That I can't bring, but I never spoke negatively to them, and tell them, hey, you don't set foot in my house, and I'm not talking to you. It's just that I say, you got this habit, is very bad. I can't keep you, or help you, or give you money, because I can't feed your habit. You need to realize that what you're doing is wrong and get yourself fixed. Go into a rehab center and get yourself, out of it. You have to clean yourself out. You have to realize that. But I never speak negatively and judgmentally against them. So this is, religion is one of the things that comes in, and why people push back. They push back against religion completely. Even I can't bring religion or a religious, so all my videos bring about a scientific perspective on things. And even this, I'm bringing the topic of religion, but more from a pragmatic perspective, a social perspective, a logical perspective, live and let live perspective, and harmony perspective. Bring harmony. You're doing spiritual practices, you're doing yoga. You don't have to live in toxicity, but don't be toxic yourself. We try to live and let live, and understand certain people are their way, right? Like I always say, you can't take a black cat and make it into a white cat. Respect they are that and stay away from them and keep your boundary, right? Look, this is it. This is how much I can accept, and you stay in your other thing, because very often you have to live with people that are toxic. Very often you don't have a choice. You may be a minor, you may be 17 years old or something, or you're unemployed and you're still living with your parents, and your siblings family or your extended family is visiting and insulting you and considering you like a dog. So it doesn't mean you have to treat them, but you maintain the neutral. Don't make the toxicity in your heart. So I got a close friend, his family treat him so badly. I said, write them. These are dangerous people. When you always with them, you feel so negative that they keep putting you down. Stay away from. Don't visit them anymore, because it's touching you so deeply in your heart. But he says, no, but I love them. I feel love for them, and this is why. And he said, look, it's my so and so's, a birthday, and I'm thinking to buy a gift. What do you think? And you keep saying, I said, look, I keep saying it because it's hurting you, but follow your heart. Forget about the past, forget about the future. You don't hold that negativity what they hold. If you feel in your heart you want to do it, but know that these people have negative against you, right? And be careful, keep your boundary. Be careful of them. Don't let what they say, hurt you, but it still hurts you. And 90% of the time is good. But I said, by you keep exposing yourself occasionally when there's certain family occasion that you have to be present, right? There's a wedding or certain religious festival that they all believe in the same thing and they visit each other, it's supposed to, then it is, you should be able to, it's a honorable thing that you do it. But I wouldn't go to meet people. There were occasions that were important occasions. There were like memorial services and a funeral itself. I did not attend because these people are very toxic, and I didn't want to expose myself to that toxicity, and I didn't want to go where the people can just ride me, and then in their time of difficulty, I must go and act like nothing happened. No, I don't need to go there. I'm not saying anything negative to them. I'm not telling them, anything bad, but I stay away from it. Is my viewpoint, and focus on the positive things, right? And associate with the positivity than associating with negativity. Associating with negativity makes me feel bad and feel negative. And I don't want to be in that situation. So there should be a balance in what you believe, what you feel, and how you impose it on others, and sometimes enduring some of the impositions when you are in a helpless situation. You have to enjoy it, but work towards being independent. When my daughter was feeling so negative and, teenagers, rebellious, I said, eventually you're going to be independent. Work towards your independence. Use this negativity to motivate yourself that you're going to become financially independent, that you can have the choice to live on your own, after that. And she never lived on her own after that, as she grew, because as she became an adult, she understood better and her mother, and she still has a good relationship with her mother. Amazing relationship she had, which she would have not had if I didn't encourage her to be patient where you need to be patient, like the serenity prayer. Help me to change the things that I can, and to accept the things that I cannot, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? Something like that. Give me the wisdom. Give me the patience to endure the things, to accept the things I cannot change. You get my point, right? I keep forgetting this because I memorized it decades ago, right? And I'm not reciting it all the time, but it's an important thing. There are some things you can change, some things you cannot change, and you have to know which you can and which you cannot, and when sometimes you can change it, but at a later date. You have to have patience and work towards changing it, right? You are maybe in a difficult situation economically, financially, and you are inundated with debts, but don't say this is over. Work towards coming out of it, even though there's no hope. But say, I will work towards clearing myself. It's either I'm going to clear it or die trying. You can have that, and suddenly an opportunity may come your way, maybe after a few months, few weeks, few years, maybe even after a decade. I didn't fail to try to control the Kundalini energy. It took me 30 years to learn how to control it manually, right? It is such an immense force. And I form like a relationship with it, like how you form a relationship with the road when you're doing road running. Like you, and as an athlete, you form a relationship when you're going to go into the second wind. You form a relationship between your nutrition protocol and your bodybuilding workouts, for example. You form a relationship between the ocean and yourself when you are surfing, right? Between the wave and yourself, you get into that relationship, right? So you learn that balance and that nuance, right? And certain things need to be respected, certain things, and don't be the source of extreme trauma, especially to your minor children. especially when it comes to religion. They are growing up and they're going to school, they got friends, and they are exposed to other viewpoints and thoughts. Don't force them into fundamentalisms. Keep an open mind and don't let them live in fear, grow up in fear. Let them grow up in love and understanding and wisdom and explanation. And what's the line? Did my children have discipline? Yes, I disciplined. They wasn't crazy and this thing, right? I should discipline them with my words. I say, hey, don't do this, don't do what. They should always obey me. But I never screamed at them and raised my voice at them or beat them. I used to explain in depth. So the mother used to shout at them and scream at them, but they never obeyed. So how come the children listen to you and don't listen to me? You know, my ex-wife used to say that in the marriage. I said, because you don't understand them, you don't know how to talk to them. You know, that's why. And they like always, you know, like there's a way of communication. I always believe that you need to, before you bring discipline in someone else, you must have the discipline inside you. So you must be able to connect on a level. Don't try to teach someone when you yourself don't believe it, right? Or you're not disciplined in yourself, and then you're under discipline. You know, your children live and let live, right? And coming back to the original reason I made this, you know, I grew up in fear of eating meat and fear that, you know, touching alcohol or smoking or having, and my, you know, the first proper girlfriend I had after I left home, right? And I went wild because I didn't have a normal teenage life, you know. So I was like a teenager when I was supposed to be an adult in, you know, 19, 20. Other people had stable relationship, but I was gone like head over heels crazy over people, and I needed to go through that growing phase that I should have outgrown in my teenage years when I was 12, 13, 14, right? And I had a delayed reaction with that, with regard to, you know, learning how to deal with relationships and afraid to be in a relationship and, you know, things like that. So, yes, try to find a balance. You believe in a certain religion, live and let live, and find your way of justice. And something, you can't be perfect, right? Okay, it says you must, certain thing is a sin and certain thing is not a sin, if that is, you know, what you believe. And okay, you believe in that, but also believe you're human, you know. To err is human and to forgive is divine, right? When we're saying forgive, doesn't mean bring your enemy into your fold. Keep your distance. Forgive it in your heart. I'm not hating my first wife or, you know, holding this thing. It's like what I told my children is, when I was divorcing, I said there comes a time when like oil and water cannot mix. We have come to a stage where it's going to be better for us to part than to be together, right? And I was very hesitant to divorce my first wife, despite, you know, having the good health. I said I'd never just divorce or separated. We separated for 3 years before we divorced, right? Didn't just, and the reason I took so long to still divorce, even though I got the positive this thing, is in the religion they say no, we must not divorce. And then there was one sermon one Friday that the Imam was saying that don't criticize people who are divorcing, because sometimes it's better to be apart than to be together. Don't just discriminate against people who are divorcing. Because usually in the religion, when the woman is divorced, although you're allowed to marry a divorce, but the culture is a divorced woman in Islam can't be expected to get married. If she's not a virgin, they're not going to get married, right? In very big in the country, the culture is practiced widely, right? And they will sleep with a woman, but they will not marry that woman until she's a virgin, or they will not. If the person has got in the Arab culture, if a woman is divorced and she got a child, there is no way in hell, 99.9999999%, she's not going to remarry in those cultures, right? Why is this? Why is this? In certain cultures, a widow, if she enters your home, you know, bad luck. You must not invite a widow in certain Hindu cultures to happy occasions, to a wedding and all. No, this is bad luck. because they believe that when a husband dies, the woman must walk into the flames and sacrifice herself together with the husband. And that is good for her. And if she decides not to go into the fire, she's going to be treated as vermin. In the writings of Gopi Krishna, he wrote in the 1960s about his Kundalini awakening. And he created a foundation to help women who were raped and women who were widows, and helping them to remarry, and women who are uneducated and from lower caste system to find them husbands, because they were treated like dogs and dirt, and empowering women, right? This is from religion and from culture, this type of things. It is so dangerous. Don't bring it. So it doesn't mean you must not embrace religion. No, doesn't mean, it's just the perspective is wrong in my belief. And who knows what is right, but when I found things, I always found something positive, right? In my religion, I found there's a verse in Islam that says, La ikra fid-din, means there's no compulsion in the religion. So how do you say La ikra fid-din, then you take the sword and if you become apostate, I'm going to chop your head? Means there's compulsion. You're forcing him. Or if he doesn't pay the tax, I'm going to chop your head. Or if you don't pray 5 times a day, I'm going to chop your head. So what's the meaning of La ikra? There's no compulsion in the religion, and then you're holding this sword. And the Prophet never chopped anyone's head when he was alive, just the later caliphs. I said, okay, the majority, even all of Islam can believe it. I'm not going to believe it. And then, sadly, before I became a Muslim 20 years ago, I was a musician, right? Loved playing music. When I came, they said music is haram. I never see in the Quran anyway it says haram, but they bring tradition and the scholars interpret it. And I was afraid to even listen to it. They said listening to it is haram. And when I listened to music, it was with trepidation that I used to listen to it. And only now, 20 years later, I came to the final conclusion that in the religion, what is haram will be clearly said is haram. And I learned this in university level as well, right? And nowhere in the Quran it says that, just the scholars interpret it that way. And I love music so much, I'm going to get back into playing music. I used to love playing the piano so much, I'm out of it. A friend of mine once invited me in Turkey, he had a piano there. He said, okay, you said you could play, come play. And I put my fingers and it was like someone who don't know how to play at all. I lost it from so long, from being away. And I used to play in a way that I used to move people, And you can go into like a type of samadhi. You go into that flow state, right? While playing, and you take the people who's listening to you into that flow state, right? And you call it haram, from a religious perspective. And I found that it's not. Only, I think, 48 hours ago, I learned. And eventually, I used to have my playlists in YouTube. I used to listen to it now and then stop, not try to make it permanent, because I say there's going to be bad luck, if you're going to listen to it. And those who listen to music in the home, no good luck going to come. You're going to have bad luck all the time and all this thing. And I said, okay, maybe there's some truth in it. There's no harm in me staying away from it. But religion is controlling people. It broke, my 6th marriage, it was because of religion, it broke. 5th marriage, because of religion, it broke. Right? 4th marriage was trust issues. 3rd marriage was, I don't know, psychosis, right? 2nd marriage, psychosis was involved, right? The person had psychological problems, and I couldn't endure. I knew I needed to have patience up to a certain level, but I'm also running businesses and I can't handle, more than what I could, right? And even the first one, so they say you got 6 divorces, right? A lot of people are afraid to divorce because of religion or because of social construct. They live in things that is toxic. I'm not saying go in and out of marriages, right? But I believe I'm a balanced, objective person. There are certain things I can accept and certain things I don't need to live with. and it's becoming toxic and affecting my health. I'm going to harm my health and my peace of mind and balance. Yes, we have to have some balance and accept certain toxicity, but where it's harming your business and harming your health, harming your income and harming your health, this is where we draw the line. Don't live in that. Prioritize your income. I think yesterday I spoke on the tribe and your income, and your territory is the core of who you are, right? From a social construct perspective. And then your health markers, your sleep, your nutrition, and this thing. Don't let toxicity come and interfere with that. That is your priority always. There should be boundaries and respect with it. And when you get into the relationship, put your boundaries clear. Don't interfere. If you cross this boundary, it's going to be, let's not, we don't want to come together because there's going to be eventually children involved. And when we're going to bring children into it, there must be, a long-term agreement, of patience and respect, mutual respect, and mutual support as well. From a relationship perspective, from, your daily activities, what's in your heart. So my foundational conclusion in life when it comes to strong beliefs, right? So science can also be a religion. They say, if it's not peer reviewed, right? And then it's not accepted. But certain things you have to have investors. The pharmaceutical industry has got big hundreds of millions to pour in money because they stand to gain hundreds of millions and billions, in profits by investing it. But by them putting in money to prove certain natural methods, what's the benefit? Because they can't monetize it, right? Your breath work, how are you going to monetize a breath work, right? Once people know how to breathe properly, it's going to have a good positive, result in your body. So how are they going to? So many things you being dogmatic and say, no, if it's not proven by science, not peer reviewed, and no clinical studies that are acceptable, then we don't accept it. And you go, no, that doesn't mean you should not keep an open mind. There may be certain truths in certain cultures, right? And I'm specializing in energy healing on a master level, specializing in critical care recovery and terminal illnesses. And my success rate is well over 90% in the last 50 years in my experience with thousands of clients. That's my current. So they say, okay, I'm probably scamming people. How do I prove it? Where is the person's name? There's the documents. These people, they want their lives private. Don't respect like a professional and his patient's privacy. Like an attorney-client, privilege. So these people they don't want to advertise an ad in public that they paid me, to pay me money to help them to overcome or manage their terminal illness, which I insist on medical treatment as well. But they don't want to be considered as people who depends on spiritual things, and people look down upon them. They're afraid to mention it, and they feel they're going to be criticized negatively about it, right? So people, they come to me when they desperate, and I'm always responsible. I said, you must also have medical intervention as well. I don't push back against medical science, and what I do is over and above that, and the success rate is very high where the people is given a DNR. Very often people were given DNR. That's the only time they come to spirituality things, because science says this is all woo-woo, right? Because they criticize negatives, push back against spirituality and energy healing and so forth. And of course there are scam artists, but there's also scam artists in the medical field as well, right? In everything, right? They scam artists, right? And they say, no, a qualified doctor is a board certified and everything, but they won't mention all the negative things, right? There was a friend of mine. He's had a problem in his spine, and he said he's going to go to a spine operation, and that's going to, because it's very painful. I said, I'm an energy healer. I fix this problem so often, and at least try this. I even gave my pamphlet, my flyer to him, where he must phone. Come, I'm going to give it to you for free. My fee, consultation fee or per session fee, is 100,000 US dollar, right? I'm on that level where I'm in very big demand. People are prepared to pay that. I'm inundated, I can't even answer calls, right? I can't answer 5 million calls a day, right? I'm not going to answer nonsense, and I want to live my life in my balance. And if I don't have any client or something, it's my prerogative, right? I'm not forcing people. I'm not scamming people. Pay it, and I'm not saying there's a guarantee you're going to this thing. And I always say, look, every person is different. No matter what, the only reason my success rate is high, because according to clinical studies, if you combine both allopathic medicine together with natural methods, you increase your likelihood of success of between 35% and 450%, according to clinical studies as recited by Dr. Dawn Musellam and she is considered the magic bullet, one of the foremost oncologists in one of the foremost private medical institutions called the Mayo Clinic in the US, considered the foremost economies of the world, right? And foremost civilization, but economies, right? A very powerful country, right? And on one of the trending top podcasts where there's over 5 million subscribers, the Mel Robbins Show, right? It's a very respected platform, right? A respected person is saying this. But we don't have peer-reviewed clinical studies that are epidemiological. Means over a 50-year period with a minimum of 2 million people from 196 countries over a 50-year period. Then only but science will say if they did an experiment with 10 people and they found this, it's peer reviewed and it's accepted. But if it's not with 50 years across 196 countries with minimum 2 million people, then with the natural thing is not accepted. I mean, come on. The results speak for itself, right? Natural methods does that, but it doesn't mean you should neglect. We're not saying no responsible saying neglect it. But we have to say this and have disclaimers and so forth, because there's a pushback against natural methods. It's like a form of, indoctrination and controlling the people, controlling the mindset of people. And people should be free. If they want to do meditation, let them do meditation. Don't say, oh, he's now an outcast, he's meditating, he's a Buddhist, and then Tibetan Buddhism. There is genocide. Currently, 1 million Tibetans were murdered in the last 50 years or so, I think. And they are running because the government is killing them because of their religious practice. And they are setting up religious institutions in Western countries like in Europe and the US, Tibetan Buddhism, because it can't be openly practiced in their countries. Even the Buddhism itself, like a lot of people, they said no, about 800, there was a certain Bodhidharma or some person, that said something about Buddhism, that there's levels of understanding and so forth, and there's no God concept and all that, right? But when I said no, the Buddha never said there is no God. He just said in his life and he never encountered any God concept. When he said like a God like a bearded man, in some throne, right? He never experienced that, right? He never said there's no God. That those who believe that there's a God is, wrong. But in Buddhism, it is more a spiritual concept that people want to agree with, because it's not against science. Science seems to be against the concept of God and religion. Now it's starting to be more open-minded on it, right? So hope that information, comes to you with a message and understanding, with the purpose that I have behind it. And with your regular practice of the protocols, you will naturally evolve, and you will start to become more embracing and more accepting and more inclusive, you know. And doesn't mean you have to let go of your identity of who you are and follow. Yes, if the whole world is going to push back against me, I don't, my self-esteem is solid, right? And I'm fine, you know. I'm okay. I'm important is I'm happy. I made the decision because I'm happy. I'm following my heart, right? My heart. Even my one ex-wife, she said, won't you just, what's the difference between you just stopping to say that you believe this? Just do your prayers and this thing. Don't say you. I said, but this is in my heart. I don't want to lie for the sake of public image what's in my heart. Even if the whole public, they want to, of course, I don't want to put myself in a situation where they're going to kill me, because in religion, you can get killed, right? Because of your belief in certain parts of the world. They will kill you, right? Especially in the Muslim religion, right? Muslims are killing Muslims, right? And certain death, certain. They are bombing mosques in Pakistan and in Afghanistan. Also, they are bombing mosque places of prayer. They are bombing, right? And this is how sad it is. You know, society, yes, there is those elements, and all we can do is spread the message. And if one person becomes more embracing or more peaceful, we are winning, you know. And but we find that we are evolving as a society. We are, you know, moving ahead, and you know, move ahead. And for your own peace of mind, is try to accept who you are, follow your heart, and sometimes you have to be patient until you're self-supporting and independent. Once you're independent, no one can tell you what to do. Then you do what you as you want in your own space that you are, you know, financially independent with. Until that time, respect the other person's rule, right? If that person's rule is no meat eating in my house, you don't order meat because you're an adult and want you to and eat. It's their house, right? They are inviting guests who are your arch enemies, right? You don't have to come out of your room and go and meet them and this thing, you know, because you're living under their roof. You just stay away, and they must respect. Say, look, I'm not saying anything negative, but I don't want to mix with them. I want to be on my own, right? So, you know, going with that, but the bottom line, follow your heart. Even if you're going to make the mistake, it's a mistake you need to make or learn from. But at the time, your heart said that. And when you look back, you say, oh, if only. But at that time, always remember you followed your heart. Never mind it was wrong and it was a wrong decision. Don't regret it, because you lived according to your heart. If you live according to that, I lived according to my heart. I made major decisions that I had a scholarship, the most prestigious scholarship in the most prestigious field and in my country and culture at that time, in those decades, the medical field. And I was a very good performer, not someone, you know, struggling. Even my colleagues came and spoke to me and said, don't leave medical school. But my heart felt it's not my field. I feel like if I can be I can be successful somewhere else. It doesn't mean the field is my God. And so, of course, my life would have been very different. I wouldn't have went through the challenges I went through had I stayed in it. But I've grown so much, and I've at a stage where I've got a level where I can influence such large numbers of people and make such large transactions and earn in billions, right? I handled billions of US dollars transactions and earned commissions of that, and grew my asset values in billions, right? Not in millions, in billions. So a medical professional at best, generally speaking, he's be lucky to earn $1 million a year, right? So we're not bringing it down to money. I always don't let money come first. I put my heart and my feeling. I'll, give up my wealth, and I gave it up many times. At the snap of, sometimes voluntarily, sometimes by force, I had to give it up because of COVID. It came and wiped you out. Because of the 2008 financial crisis, wipe you out, right? But other times when people came and I didn't hesitate. I didn't want money and my career objectives to be above another human's life or above someone that I loved and someone that is depending on me. I put that first above above money, And there was once I used to negotiate very big transactions and, purchasing properties from the banks in bulk. Like I used to buy like 200 houses at a time, right? 200. And the director of the bank, because I'm buying so many, I used to meet with the director level of the bank, and he was curious. Like I'm talking like a normal person, and like when the meeting was finished, he said, okay, let me walk you to it. He was curious to know what car I'm driving, because it's not making sense, the language I'm speaking, how I'm speaking, and how I'm dressed like a normal person, simply, right? Simply dressed. And but what I'm doing, it's like, and I'm actually doing it, I'm buying, and you just wonder what kind of car. When he saw the car, so he thought maybe I have some secret investors behind me, not really my money or something, right? When he saw the car that I'm driving, because I had a bespoke top range level that even people can't afford it was more expensive than a luxury home in a luxury neighborhood. I was using that as a car, as a business to drive around. He said, my God, is this your car? I said, yes, this is my car. And I could, like the words unspoken. Like, how can a guy like this afford a car like that? And of course, I mean, he kept going, he never say anything because I was doing the business and I was, helping the bank actually. And it was a benefit to them because I was getting rid of their problems, their unwanted properties. And I was buying it in bulk, what they couldn't sell. I'm bringing cash flow to them. Wherever you bring in cash flow to, they won't speak. As long as they're profiting or bringing some benefit to their company or their personal life. And I used to give commissions as well, to other private people and so forth. And they treat you with respect because they're going to gain something financially from you. But if they're not going to gain, they treat you like a dog, And when I listen to some of the serials, I used to relate to that because I used to be very helpful when I was that 6 years of struggle, right? Before, when I went into entrepreneurship, before I started to become wealthy, I used to always, when people need my help, they just call me. No problem. Please, can you pick me up in the morning? I don't have transport. I have to go to work. I will, no problem. Anytime I will pick, and not charging them petrol or I'm struggling. I'm going and delivering pizza just for my petrol money. But I will make time to help people, help them in the homes, help them to go for shopping, and always being helpful. If they just need my help, I'm there to help them. They're having some occasion, they can count on me to come and help them to set up and everything. They know there's no this thing. And then they insulted me. Who am I? I'm just some cheap, this thing, my opinion counts for nothing. The ones they insulted because they had a big house and they were living in a mansion and I was driving a very simple car at the time, right? One of the cheapest cars in the market I was driving, and they insulted me as a person because my financial status was not on their level. And they really hurt my feelings so deeply. And I said, I will not expose myself to them anymore, this way. And I will just work hard. And so happens, within a few months, it was that motivation that motivated me to work even harder. And I started to make $1 million a month. And I bought a car, and I never said anything bad to them when they said that bad to me, right? And they once called me, and I happened to meet them, and I had to give them a lift to the airport once. They had no transport to the airport. So I came in my amazing, beautiful luxury car that they couldn't afford, right? And they said, wow, this is beautiful and amazing. And they were talking words of praise. And I never remind them of what they said to me. I took them and I left them, and they needed. And I had a friend who, when he saw what I could afford, his face went funny, that he couldn't afford. He was my friend for over 10 years, right? And when I started to climb the ladder and he saw that he always considered himself very successful and then when I exceeded him, I was so proud because of his motivation, I'm getting the success. When I got this amazing, beautiful car, right? And I made him, I said, go straight to him first. Let him be the first person to drive it other than me. I want him to drive it, right? And he's the only other person that are allowed to drive that car. Anyway, and his face went dead. And after that, because people, he always wanted this type of car, but your own friend beat you to it. And he felt that he will not waste that type of money for that level, where it's more expensive than the most expensive luxury home, that he'll buy a luxury car, but not on that level, right? And I thought, no, I'm on that level because he always motivated me when I'm failing. No, go again, make the next sale, do the deal, push yourself, this thing. And I was pushing and I was going up and up and up and up and up, because of that moral support of his. And I didn't want to forget him. And people hold that against each other, that bias, And so learn to be more open-minded. And when people are biased against you, stay away from them. But you don't have to go and show the other cheek. I'm not saying if someone slaps you, show the other cheek. Okay, slap me in this cheek. Stay away, Stay away from it. And sometimes you're forced to, don't forget the good that they did. And try to remember, don't keep the bad that they did in your heart, but keep it as a line that was crossed, as a boundary. Have your boundaries. Use it for your boundaries, right? Don't hold it in your heart. Unfortunately, even the closest people that you trusted all your life can disappoint you after 30 years, after 40 years. There was someone that I didn't trust fully, and I always keep my self-esteem in myself. And I even told them, that I don't really put my trust totally in humans, because humans are human, right? And they may cross a boundary. And there came a day after, more than 40 years, right, in my life, that they crossed that boundary. And then I reflected, hey, they crossed this. And I never held it against them. I knew they're human and they did it for their own motivations. They had their own thing, but they were unfair in that situation, right? They did something that is openly considered as harmful to me. I didn't say it to them, and I never said any negative word. I never insulted my enemy. They said they're going to make sure that they're going to destroy me, they're going to kill me, the contract kill me, and they destroyed my image online, opened a special Facebook page and putting pictures of me, because I was in the wellness industry, sometimes we do a before and after photo, and we just show the decent part, the top half of your body, like how it was before and how it was after, that after we use these products or getting into this program. So they'll take that before picture and then they'll turn the subject around and put it in a business environment. This is the person you're trusting. And they'll put lies against me and make investigations, open criminal investigations against me. And, and say, okay, there's this case against him and he is criminal number one. And report me to Interpol and all that and make me to be wanted, right? Not because I'm running away from the law. I never ran away from the law, right? I moved around freely and I faced, when I had to face something, I faced it. And whatever cases that were brought up against, I faced them, right? And I always think, these people don't understand spirituality. How can they accuse me of being so heartless and scamming and cheating? Don't they know it's not in my construct to be even possible to think that way? But yet they do it, and that's how the world is, and I don't hate the world for it. Did Jesus hate the world when he had to drag the cross and he was slashed and he given a crown of thorns and bleeding, right? Is what the narrative is saying, right? And he had to drag and pull that cross on his own, and when he was nailed to the cross, the narrative says that he said, Father, forgive them. He's nailed, he's almost dying. He said, Father, forgive them, for they they know not what they do. Right? So have that type of attitude. I'm not telling you to become Jesus or become religious or something, but live and let live. For the sake of money and greed, for growing, don't do harm to other people and tarnish their image. Don't come up by tarnishing people's images, right? And very often I didn't want to make profit from things by pushing back against someone else or I didn't want to take an investor and the investor come and say, no, we don't want you to give all this information for free. You must package it and only this must be published. And I didn't want to take a sponsor from my book publishing this thing because I didn't want them to change what I'm writing. I want to have autonomy in what I'm saying. I have 100% copyright on my words, in my books that I'm writing, and I have 100% copyright what I'm saying online. So I hope you appreciate and understand what I'm saying, where I'm coming from, and you live a more harmonious life and adopt, the spirituality practices to evolve yourself as a human, to come on the level where life is so amazing, despite how the world is and so forth. I'm in paradise every day. My paradise is in my heart, in my mind, I'm happy with my decisions and can face any problem because I'm true to my own self. This is the most important thing that you have to worry about. So take care.